the Cannabis Business Coach.
Hi, Mike Z here, author of the Cannabis Business Book, and you're listening to the Cannabis Business Coach podcast, where I chat with and coach the highest performing entrepreneurs in the cannabis industry.
Hi, Mike Z is. Hi, Mike Z is. Hi, Mike Z is. The Cannabis Business Coach.
Hi, Mike Z here, and on today's episode of the Cannabis Business Coach podcast, I'm joined by Rich Gonzalez, the founder of Amendment 64 and inventor of the Chill, which is a smoking apparatus, and you'll see a lot more of them in Rich's screen. But Rich, thank you for being here. And if you don't mind, can you tell the folks watching or listening a little more about you and your background?
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for the great intro. I'm by trade. I'm an inventor, a product ideator. I've been in the manufacturing and design industry for about 6 years now. Prior to that, I grew up in retail. I started out bagging groceries when I was a kid, moved my way up through the grocery business, and then on to I worked for Bed Bath & Beyond for 10 years. Created a consulting company, started helping people sell to Walmart. And eventually came across a great housewares, an amazing housewares company. I worked for them for the last 6 or 7 years or so. And that's kind of when I had the idea for the Chill. One of the products that I helped create with the last company that I was with was a water bottle company called Mana Hydration. And while I was working on that project about 4 years ago is kind of when I had the great idea. We were making vacuum insulated bottles. And, the very first thing since I was a kid, I've always made bongs on my own. And the very first thing that came to my head was, man, that would make a very, very cool smoking apparatus. So, that's the gist of it. I had the idea about 4 years ago. It's taken me 4 years to bring it to market, but we're finally here. Our goods are actually landing 4/20, which is, it's a sign, I guess you could say. That's the gist of it, man.
That's awesome. And, I'll just share with you that my family and I landed in America on 4/20 when I was a baby.
Nice.
So, I half joke that it was my destiny to be doing all of this cannabis, what do you call it? I don't know, advocacy, being a cannabis ambassador. So very cool, very interesting background there, Rich. I'm wondering, like, why or how did you decide to get into cannabis? And was there a moment when it all clicked and you were like, all right, I'm going all in on this thing? Or did it start more like, I had this great idea, I wanted to pursue it? And, tell me a little more about that transition, if you will.
Sure. It honestly starts back when I was a teenager, when I was in high school. I was working full time in a grocery store, and then I was also working full time, in the illicit cannabis marketplace, I guess you could say, right? So I've always been an entrepreneur at heart, but obviously, the illicit cannabis market, 25 years ago was kind of a scary place to be. So it's something that I exited. I got married and those kind of things. So it's, I had to go into corporate world, that type of environment. And then really it just comes down to happenstance. I ended up in the manufacturing industry, design and manufacturing industry. And I had the idea and it was just a light bulb. I just had to go for it. I've always had that spirit of wanting to do it on my own. That was one of the great things about the last company I worked for. I got to do that with them, but I was doing it with spatulas and cutting boards and water bottles and these kind of things. When I had this idea, I just had to jump on it. Of course, COVID helped me out a lot. As unfortunate it is to say something like that, I didn't have to drive into the office every day for a year and a half. So that gave me an extra couple hours a day to kind of work on the project. And I just took advantage of the extra time that I had to create and launch the product.
Gotcha. So then if I'm hearing and understanding correctly, it sounds like this was a side project and you're still working full time and doing the corporate thing and then building this out on the side. Is that right? Or
Absolutely, 100%. I've been essentially working very I'm an executive at this company, or director of sales and marketing. That's my title. So it's a very intense job, and you know, it's not something. It's not one of those jobs where you punch in and punch out. It's a 24/7 job. You're on the phone with the factories overnight. You have sales calls constantly. You're building websites. You know, there's all kinds of things that's going on. So I couldn't exactly just put that on pause. So this new company, this new endeavor has just literally been a second full-time job. So for the last 2.5 years, 3 years, it's been a grind, putting literally 80 hours in a week, jumping over those hurdles despite having to do the day job essentially, right? So I would have to forget my night job when I was at my night job and be 100% on board with my day job, and that's just kind of how it went.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love how you're so nonchalant about it and just so matter of fact. And it's interesting because I know a little of your background outside of all this stuff that you shared with me earlier, and it's just like this approach to working hard, and also your story just shows me, and hopefully the folks listening, that if you really care about this stuff, if you're really passionate about it, you're going to put in those extra hours. You're going to work nights and weekends. You're going to stay up late. You're going to get up early, whatever it takes to build it. If you're really passionate about it, you'll do it. You'll show up and you'll figure out a way. If you don't know the way, or if you can't find the way, make the way.
100%.
And so I hear that, I see that in your story, and I just want to encourage everyone, if you're considering being a cannabis entrepreneur, getting into the industry in some way, and you're not willing to put in those hours or make yourself uncomfortable or sacrifice some of that free time or whatever, if you don't have that whatever it takes mindset, I don't think you're going to make it very far in this industry, because there's going to be challenges and hurdles and headaches and all of this stuff that, it's not as glamorous as it seems once you're in it and trying to build something. It's insanely hard. And unless you love it, I really recommend that you think twice before you get involved. So anyway, with that said, Rich, I want to ask you, what's your experience been like working in the industry and trying to bring a product to market in cannabis, as opposed to some of the other industries and spaces you've played in? Is it significantly different, or what's been really surprising for you? Share a little about your experience.
Sure. Yeah. So it's very, very different than any other kind of retail in the world. With my last company, our buyers were the big box retailers. You name any big box retailer, the Walmarts, the Costco's, those guys, they have thousands of stores, right? So if you land one of those big fish like that and you get one PO from them, it's very lucrative. In this business, I think the biggest, and I'm in the ancillary business, so I'm not talking dispensaries, that kind of thing, anything flower touchings, strictly ancillary. But in this business, probably the largest chain of stores is 150 doors. So even if you land that big deal with that 150 doors, they may only buy one unit per door. So you're selling 150 units. Manufacturing at scale, you're looking at minimum 1,200 units of something to purchase, right? If you want to get your costs to where they need to be and do imports the way they need to be done, you got to be in the 5,000 to 10,000 unit range. So it's a pretty big risk. You have to know, you just have to believe in your product. If you believe in your product and you're willing to take that risk, I say go for it. It is a very, very different marketplace than any other retail, though. That's kind of been the biggest hurdle, the biggest learning curve. The other part about the cannabis space is, at least on the ancillary side, is it's really in its infancy. I like to compare it to grocery stores in the 1950s. So back in the 1950s, there were hundreds, if not thousands, of small independently owned grocery stores. And then they started coming together and say, hey, let's create, a conglomerate where we all have one distributor buy our goods and distribute it to us. And that way we can, save on cost. So that's kind of where I see the cannabis, at least again, in the ancillary space. That's where we are at right now. You have a bunch of small independent smoke shops. They're all kind of fending for themselves out there. And I think over the next, as decriminalization happens across the country, there's going to be bigger and bigger players in the marketplace. But as of right now, it's a grind. If you want to get into each one of those, you got to talk to a million people. You got to get on that phone. I picked up my first sale literally cold calling for days. No, I don't. I've never heard of such a thing. Literally people hanging up on you, and you just can't stop. It's it's just if you believe in it, you just can't stop. No matter how many no's you get, you just keep on going until you get that yes.
As a former salesperson myself, I'm reminded of the old saying that each no brings you closer to a yes. So we love those no's, we love those yeses even more, but we hate those maybes.
Yeah, for sure. And I always tell people, I grew up, like I said, I grew up in the grocery business. I didn't go to college. I started out bagging groceries, but when I started bagging groceries, I learned how to bag those groceries the best freaking way I could, right? And by the time I was 16 years old, I was the salad bar manager at the grocery store, right? And that seems like, oh, what is that? You're a salad bar manager, right? But a teenager, managing thousands of dollars worth of inventory, ordering, those kind of things. But I made sure that I learned how to do that job 100%. And I took the knowledge from it with me, right? So every job and every position that I've had through my, 28 years in retail and in manufacturing on this side of the business, I've literally just soaked up as much knowledge as I can from every single company that I've worked at. I worked for Bed Bath & Beyond as a department manager. But even as just a department manager, I learned every system that the company had. I learned about every single product. I understood everything about every product. And it gave me essentially the knowledge base to understand what a package should look like. It gave me an idea of what retailers look for in an item. It gave me an understanding of what kind of packaging works and doesn't work. So when you're going to that 9-to-5 job that sucks, it sucks, right? But if you're gonna make the best of it, don't just make the best of it by just being happy. Oh, I'm happy at work. To me, learn something while you're there, because there's people that are above you in those positions. There are ownership and management that have done that and have made good things happen for them because of that knowledge. At least that's the way I see it. That's the way I did it, I guess you could say.
Awesome. And I have to joke that, I heard you say earlier that you're an entrepreneur in the cannabis industry in your youth. And I think the title of salad bar manager for, cannabis entrepreneur, teenage cannabis entrepreneur is a pretty good title, salad bar manager.
Yeah. I was the salad bar manager. It was a pretty good gig, man. I would have, I would leave some things in my car. People would come into my place of work, and I'd give them my car keys. And when I came back to my car, there'd be a pile of money under the seat. I don't know how that worked out, but it worked out good. I was the salad bar manager at the Dominic's Foods in just outside of Chicago. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Oh man, that's great. I wanted to highlight one thing, which is, this is something that I also preach in my book, the Cannabis Business Book, which is available on Amazon in case you are interested in getting into the business or investing in the business. And I think Rich is living proof that this is an unorthodox industry. And so most people who are successful in this space don't have a traditional background. So I heard Rich say that, he didn't go to college. That's okay. He worked his way up in corporate America and went to, a bunch of big organizations where he learned and developed himself and got an education through experience. And I think that's absolutely critical. As someone who has worked in the corporate world myself, there's a reason some of these big, huge corporations are so successful. And it's because they have good systems and processes, and they're effective at getting shit done. which when you're an entrepreneur, to have that understanding of structure and process and how important even just being a professional is, even just being, responding to emails on time and this kind of thing, which is like, the standard for that in corporate America is often, I find, much higher than what I've encountered in the nascent cannabis industry. But having that experience and being able to bring that into your cannabis venture, whatever your venture is, I think is hugely underrated and often underappreciated. So if you're working that corporate job right now and you think it sucks and you're not enjoying it, make sure you're learning, squeeze the value out of it. That's on you to go and make
100%.
sure that, you're leveraging those resources, because the truth is there's a lot of resources there,
Yep.
whether you're aware of it or not. So Rich, I want to ask you, what are you most excited about right now in the cannabis world?
Well, obviously the launch of the chill, right? So, I mean, we're kind of officially launching in July. However, our first batch of goods, like I said, is landing here. It's landing in our warehouse on 420, which to us is a sign. But yeah, I mean, obviously legalization probably bigger than the chill. National decriminalization, would be way more excited about that. But obviously I'm going to be selfish and say that it's 100% the launch of the chill that's the most exciting thing happening in the marketplace right now.
Awesome. So tell me more about that launch. So where can people go to get a chill of their very own?
So for right now, they're out of stock online, but they're, like I said, they're going to be in stock soon. You just go to www.chill.store. We have them available in both the single wall or the single stainless steel, or we have some of the mix and matches and the glitters that are on there too. So one of the great things about the device is it's actually threaded, so you can pull it apart and change the neck. So if you liked this blue bottom with that blue top, or this blue bottom with that black top, then you can make that happen. Coming up in my distributors should be getting the product shortly after 420, probably by 5:10 or so, and they'll start hitting. They're going to be in about 2,000 stores across the country, and they'll start hitting those stores sometime mid next month.
Amazing. And I'm going to do something crazy today, something I've never done on the show today prior to this point. And
Awesome.
This will be like episode 40 something. I'm going to consume some hemp.
Yeah, you got to get your CBD in.
Yeah. Well, this is actually a specific strain of high THC hemp.
Yeah.
Hopefully they don't throw me off YouTube for this, but I think to celebrate the chill coming to market, it would only be right for me to show the folks at home how this smoking apparatus works. So it's pretty simple. Here goes. Nice and cool, very pleasant, very smooth.
Yeah,
I dig
well,
it.
Don't it?
I dig
Yeah,
it.
man.
Yes, it does. Back in the day, I really enjoyed the warm water in the smoking apparatus.
Sure.
But for this, I put in like maybe it was too hot, but it was like it stayed so warm.
Oh yeah.
It was really a very unique hit. I've never experienced that before. And I was like, I don't think this is the way to go here. So now I got the cold water in there and it's extremely effective. I love the ceramic lining. You can't, I don't know, maybe you can see, but
we probably should explain what the device does, huh?
That would be a good idea.
That part, right?
Why don't you do that while I test it again to make sure that the quality is being controlled?
Sounds like a plan. So it is a double wall vacuum insulated smoking apparatus. So in other words, it's 2 layers of steel where we suck the air out of the in between of those 2 layers. And when you do that, it works very similar to any of your favorite insulated water bottles where no heat transfer happens. So whatever the temperature of the liquid that you put inside of it is, it'll remain at that temperature for a very long time. So it's great for both people who like those warm hits. I don't recommend putting super, super hot water in it when you do that, as you just brought up, but you can add some warm water and people do like that. But it's also great for making it extremely cold. So you put some ice cubes in there. Those ice cubes are going to last. We've done testing. Just depending on the ambient temperature, they've gone all the way up to 36 hours on average. Though, if you're a smoker that smokes all day, you're probably looking at 6 to 12 hours. If it's just for a session for the evening, you're definitely not going to have to add ice, that kind of thing. And then the interior is actually ceramic lined. So it's the exact same stuff. The ceramic lining is the exact same lining that they put on ceramic cookware nowadays. So it's a surface that's it's an innate substance. In other words, it's BPA free. It doesn't have any chemicals in it. It is an FDA approved food contact surface. But that's what it is. It's ceramic. So it makes it hit just like glass. It smokes just like glass, and it actually cleans a little bit easier than glass, in my opinion. But if anything, as easy as glass. But yeah, that's what it does, and it's, like I said, it's got the neck that comes off. So we're going to have all kinds of cool stuff that we'll be putting in between. We're working on some percolators that'll go right in between the two parts there. I can't show those to you yet, but they are coming and they do work great. But yeah, that's the gist of it.
That's awesome. And this is now for me officially the most lit episode of the podcast that I've had. Not that I haven't been lit for prior episodes. It's just I haven't done that on the show yet. So Rich, this is also your first podcast you mentioned to me. So this is a special one for both of us now.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've never done a podcast, never been interviewed. I'm pretty, as I was telling you before, I'm a pretty reserved guy. Kind of pretty much an introvert. So yeah, it's been great so far though.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you stepping beyond your comfort zone and joining me. And I did want to mention one other thing about the chill, which is, this is stainless steel. You're not going to break this thing, unless you really try. And I think it would require some serious effort. So, just wanted to highlight that as well.
I actually have a new one. I have a new one coming out. Let's see, this guy right here. So this guy right here actually has an armored finish on it. So not only will you not be able to break it, but it's very, very difficult to scratch it or dent it. So it's very similar to what's on, the finish is very similar to if you've ever had any lawn furniture, like your outdoor furniture, it's a very similar finish to that. It's extremely durable. But yeah, it's in general, the steel itself too is actually thicker than any steel that your vacuum insulated water bottles are made of. It's a double the thickness. So even as far as dents, as far as dents go, it's very difficult to even dent the device.
Got it. And that armored piece you just showed me just looks cool. That design, I gotta say, is pretty fresh. Like that pattern or whatever the texture look of it, I dig it. I'm curious to ask you, and feel free to say, you don't want to share that publicly. I will totally respect that. But I'm just curious, given your passion for cannabis, your design experience and manufacturing experience, and I'm wondering, do you have other inventions that you're working on beyond the chill that we can expect to see from Amendment 64? And is there anything that you can share publicly? And if not, again, totally will respect that, and we'll just move on to the next question.
Sure. Yeah, I do. So my father, he is actually a mechanical engineer. And so he helped me actually with the initial designs on this device. But we do have some pretty cool stuff coming in the pipeline. I think the only thing that I can really discuss is going to be is really the percolators that are coming to attach the device. But as far as Amendment 64 and the amount of products that we're going to be bringing there, we probably have 20 products in the pipeline right now that'll be attachments for this device. And we're actually actively searching for independent glass artists to collaborate with us in creating some mixed material devices. So if there's anybody out there, can find us on chill.store again, and reach out and tell us you're interested in, and we'll get you some specs on how to make some things that attach to the device.
Awesome. All right. I'm curious to see what kind of collaborations might arise from that. Rich, let me ask you, Will, beyond what you just shared, are you working on anything outside of the smoking, combustion, consumption kind of product, or is that really a core focus for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, Justin from BuzzFeed earlier, which BuzzFeed, amazing website. It's honestly, if it wasn't for me meeting Justin and collaborating with him and BuzzFeed, I really don't think that this device would have come to market as fast as it did. So highly recommend visiting his site as well, and seeding your products there. But yes, we have rolling trays. My background in the housewares industry is kind of it's kind of unique. So the company that I work for, we pretty much made things out of just about any material you can think of. Everything from marble to exotic woods, silicones, all these different kinds of materials. So essentially, we're going to leverage my experience with those materials in creating some fabulous cannabis ancillary items, put it to you that way. So I'm super excited to get there. Right now, our focus is obviously the chill. After our launch in July, I think we're going to start bringing more and more products to the offering.
Awesome. And then one question that came up, I mean, I think the answer is fairly obvious, but just in case, I wanted to check, is your current employer, your full-time gig, the business that you work on, the day job, are they cool with you being so cannabis centric in outside of the day job? And I asked this, partially because I always like to check in on the cannabis stigma, which I think is very real and still exists in our world. And so I just wanted to see what that's like, or how, I'm guessing they're obviously supportive, right? But I'm curious if maybe that wasn't always the case, or if you had some hesitation in like communicating that, or, I just wanted to check on that.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the company that I worked for, the ownership of that company, they are like my brothers. They're amazing. I've learned probably 40 years worth of knowledge of the industry from these guys. So I can't stress enough how awesome they are. Over the last, my 6 years with the company, I never really brought up cannabis use. The ownership there, they're not participants in it. They don't know anything about the cannabis industry, but they've never been anti-cannabis, put it to you that way. Moving into this space, they have been beyond supportive of me, and really they're gonna end up being great partners for me, and I'm gonna be a great partner for them in the future. But for the most part, there was no real stigma. I mean, it was pretty gut wrenching. I mean, in full transparency, this was supposed to be like a little side gig that kind of, a little extra supplement of income. But the reaction to it has just been incredible. We've had smoke shops from around the country just requesting thousands and thousands of units, which almost instantly before we've even officially launched. So I had to go to ownership of my last company and tell them essentially, hey, it looks like I'm going to have to bring this on as a full-time gig. And yeah, they weren't upset about it at all. They weren't, taken aback by it being cannabis, that kind of thing. It's an industry that they would never be in. So having a partner in that industry and outside of that industry, I think is in the end is going to be a good thing. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you for that. I want to highlight the importance of having good partners there. You mentioned Justin, who helped accelerate the chill and bringing that to market. You mentioned the folks that you work with, right? Your partners in your kind of traditional business, we'll call it, and or non-cannabis career, and their support and their willingness to be, flexible with you came to them, you said you had to pursue this thing because of the response. And like any true partner, they were supportive because they probably were excited for you and the opportunity and all this stuff, right? So I think it's so critical in this industry to have high standards for the folks that you partner with, and make sure that they can either match or respect and appreciate the cannabis passion that you bring to it. Because if you want to succeed in this industry, you need to have that passion, or at least someone in the business has to bring that cannabis passion.
Oh, yeah. Preferably everybody.
Exactly. And that's often not the case, because so many folks are coming into the industry, or they see the green rush, they just acknowledge that this is a huge opportunity to make money, because it's a industry being born that's growing at crazy rates. So anyway, the punchline there is that not everyone has that privilege, right? Where their job will allow them to do anything cannabis related. That stigma is really, really real still. And that's why I encourage anyone, if you want to be in this industry, you have to be an activist. You have to get involved in policy. You have to be an advocate for those folks that have greater anti-cannabis bias and stigma working against them, especially the folks who are locked up for doing cannabis related commerce. And so that's just my activist spiel for the day. I have to slide that into the show somewhere.
Great. I love it.
Yeah.
100% agree with you there.
Awesome. Thank you, Rich. All right, Rich, let me ask you, is there anything we didn't cover today that you wanted to mention, or any advice for folks that are considering joining the industry, or wanting to invest in the industry, or anything like that? Anything you want to share with the cannabis community that we haven't covered today?
I think we covered most of it. I'd say if you're getting into the business, it's like you said, it's more than just a product. Anybody can come up with a great product idea. If you don't have the right team around you and people around you supporting you, working with you, then it's a very, very, very daunting process. Once you, and like I said before, BuzzFeed was just simply put, it threw gasoline on my fire. Once I seeded the product there and I got, started working with Justin, everything kind of folded into place. And really what it wasn't necessarily BuzzFeed, the website, right? It wasn't necessarily, just getting the product on there. It was that relationship that I got with Justin. And since then, we've created those very similar relationships with other people in the industry over the past couple of years that have just been key to the success. So I guess there's that. I guess that's the most important thing to me. The most important thing is people, and passion. And that's, you got those. If you have those three things, I think you're on a road to success.
People, and passion. Was that right?
People, and passion. Yeah, you can do it 3 times, 2 times. The people is the more important part, I guess. Passion is usually already there, but you got to have it.
Gotcha. So I'm hearing 2 parts people, 1 part passion. I'm going to add 1 part planet. And, one way to get that planet into the team is with the chill.
There you go. I can dig that. I like it.
So Rich, let's shift gears into a coaching moment. And so I want to ask you, what is your biggest business buzzkill today?
I would say probably the government. I mean, in every aspect. I was going to say, well, the taxes, but taxes suck. But beyond the taxes, they're ridiculous laws. Those are a bigger problem than the taxes. And, yeah, government would be my answers to that. to keep up with our repeating words a couple times to emphasize it situation. Government.
I love that answer. It's a great answer. And I have to take a moment to remind anyone who might not be aware that even on the ancillary side of things, you're going to deal with so many roadblocks and barriers and headaches and unnecessary challenges just because you're ancillary to cannabis compared
That's
to
right.
being in any other business. And it's, that means legal fees, that means a whole bunch of extra expenses of time and money and effort, which is another great reason I encourage people not to get into the cannabis business unless you really love it. But anyway, so Rich, when you say the government, is there a specific, I'm sure there are many, but is there a specific challenge that's like particularly, holding back your business today, or something that you're experiencing recently that we could dig into?
I don't want to go into too much detail, but I'll talk.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Let me
That's
put it to
fine.
you this way: if you're in this business and you don't have a great legal team, you're going to need it. You're going to need a good legal team. Put it to you that way. There are legal hurdles that you have to jump over. Even I come from, a very strong import background, product manufacturing background. I've dealt with the FDA. I've dealt with some of the most difficult retailers in the world. So companies like Costco, Starbucks, even Walmart, they actually do all kinds of third-party testing on products. That's unreal. They do social testing, they do social audits, they do product testing, and your products have to be up to par with those guys. It's very, very difficult. That's very, very difficult to do. You add on the layer of it being an ancillary cannabis ancillary item, and you're looking at 10 times the difficulty of that. That was something that I kind of learned along the way. Was like, hey, this isn't going to be a problem. I've been doing this for years. It's no problem. And then the next thing I know, I'm getting letters about this and letters about that, and hey, you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way. The legal team telling me, oh, it's going to be an extra X amount of money, and it adds up. It adds up quick. So before you come to market, before you start to produce a single product, make sure that you are covered on your legal side and prepared to pay those expenses.
Absolutely. And the accounting, all the corporate governance stuff, get all of those ducks in a row first, and then, be prepared to to make a lot of adjustments along the way, just because it's even ancillary to cannabis. So Rich, but I do want to go back and ask you if there's, really any pain in the neck issues that are like a specific. And I know some examples, because we talked a little about one offline that I think is relevant, but I totally understand not wanting to get into that. But I'm just wondering if there's anything that comes to mind that you think
it all comes down to decriminalization, right? So there are things in the marketplace that by having them, it can be a crime to have them, that don't even, it's not flower. There's archaic laws on the books that were created through silly court cases that had literally the worst people brought to the stand as experts to name things. So we can't dive into too much detail, because the details, and honestly, I believe that your listeners probably know what we're getting at. When you go into a head shop, it's all tobacco use only items in a smoke shop, and there's a reason for that, and and there just shouldn't be, is what it comes down to.
Absolutely. So then, for me, it comes back to my favorite point, which is, I always say, number one on my list, besides love cannabis. That's number one. But number two is, you have to be an activist and an advocate. And so the question that comes up for me more broadly is, President Biden is not very 420 friendly, we'll say. And so I'm curious, in any kind of decrim that's coming, and I think it's pretty clear the writing on the wall for many years has been that it's coming. It's just a question of how soon. And it seems sooner and sooner as we go on. But the question is, are the decrim laws, is the new policy going to fix some of these problems of, for example, a word that's coming up for me of like paraphernalia, right? Like that has some archaic interpretations and precedents when the justice system was very much about punishing people for anything related to drugs or certain activities related to drugs. So what can entrepreneurs or activists do today to help change those policies and bring them to the modern day and really make them business friendly in a way that supports entrepreneurs and grows the industry and creates jobs and is regenerative in the way that this industry ought to be?
To me, to me, it's get out there and vote. As we see, I don't think there's any particular political party that is 100% on our side. So no matter what side of the aisle you're on, whatever your thoughts are on it, it's a plant. When it comes to voting, you're voting about a plant in the end. So to me, the biggest thing is 100% get out there and vote. Change these laws are archaic, and they make zero sense. As far as on the flip side of it, I think once decriminalization happens, to me, the marketplace will take care of the rest. We'll fill in those gaps. I certainly do believe that we have to make sure that there is equity when it comes to opening up this marketplace. So again, that again comes down to voting on those policies, and making sure that everybody gets their fair share of the space is what I think.
Absolutely. And I'll add to that, go educate your elected officials, whoever that may be, wherever you may be, and show them the relevance of the policy in the community. And then, of course, there's got to be policy out there to replace these archaic systems. And, that stuff's above my pay grade. So I'm curious to hear from you. What was the highlight of the conversation here today for you?
Meeting you, man. We've been talking for a while, and I'm glad. I know when we first touched base, I can't remember if you reached out to me or I reached out to you, but you were like, "What is this thing?" You're like, "I don't know about this. I don't know." And then once you had that sample, you were like, "Oh, all right, I get it. This thing's pretty badass. All right, let's do this." So yeah, I'm just excited that's having my product get into people's hands finally after these years of blood, sweat, and tears and hurdles, and essentially putting my entire life savings, not to mention hours and hours and hours of no sleep and working 2 jobs, essentially. It's just amazing seeing it being seen and used by others. And I'm a product guy. I've actually made designed tons of items that are in millions and millions of people's hands. This is the first time that it's something that's just 100% me without a whole bunch of other people helping, really. So it's just getting it out there is the most exciting part of it all, really. Yeah, including this podcast here.
That's awesome, man. Well, I'm so pumped that I could have the first podcast with you and right before the launch of the product or right as it's launching. I got to go back though. It's funny because for me, I get a lot of ideas and a lot of pitches and all this kind of stuff. And so I do remember giving you the feedback of like, I don't know, man, like it sounds cool, but is it a nice to have or a need to have? That was kind of my thought, right? Just
Right.
as from my perspective as a consumer. And
Sure.
then what really impressed me though was the traction you guys were getting and the way that you were executing and how everything I had seen from you and your team was done in a professional way and was making progress. So for me, and then I got the sample,
Awesome.
and which, made me feel even better about the whole thing, of course. Thank you for that. And I'm excited to see this come to market. So tell the folks where they can go and get a hold of it, one last time as it launches just in time for 420.
Sure, it's going to be at www.chill.store. Don't put the in there though. It's just www.chill.store.
Chill.store. Awesome.
Chill.store.
Thank you so much, Rich. It's been a joy chatting with you and getting to connect.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Hi, Mike Z is. Hi, Mike Z is. Hi, Mike Z is the cannabis business coach. Hi, Mike Z is. Hi, Mike Z is. Hi, Mike Z is
the cannabis business coach.